Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a delight to rise today and add my thoughts to this Take Note debate. I want to take the opportunity, though, Madam Speaker, to speak to the importance of something that has been lacking in the government's response to COVID, and that is transparency and accountability, which I think we just saw in the House of Commons a few seconds ago. I'll also be addressing how critical it is that Parliament be sitting to oversee the response of this pandemic. And I think we've seen this week, we can, as all sides of this chamber, agree to sit for the first time in years, maybe even history, that we sit in summer. And we can have a great discussion on the disability bill, C-20, that we talked about here in this place Monday and Tuesday. Parliament was granted the special spending powers to the government so that they could get the emergency support that Canadian workers and many businesses in a fashion that was quick and responsive. And it was very well when it was, I can remember the day here in the chamber. It was March 13th, a Friday, when we rose, we didn't know when we'd be back, and then all of a sudden, 3 days later, the Prime Minister told everyone to come home. And it was Monday, and it was March 16th. Opposition parties, I think, have worked with the government to come to an agreement that is crucially important, particularly considering how difficult it was at a time to hold the proper sittings here in the House of Commons. What Parliament did not consent to was a process to avoid transparency and accountability at every turn. The government has done everything it can to avoid some of the questions from the opposition members, even debate and some scrutiny. Jobs were lost in the millions in this country. Businesses were shutting down. The economy was shrinking at an unprecedented rate. We've never seen that since the Second World War. And the projected deficit has ballooned to nearly $350 billion. So why did it take the government until this month, July, nearly 4 months, to give us any information at all on the state of the economy and its budget? If we follow the pattern of behavior of this government, it is clearly easy to know that they are avoiding Parliament and its functions as an institution of accountability. I do remember the day the finance minister stood up and told everyone we had a deficit of $343 million. It was unheard of. People were phoning my office in Saskatoon, Grasswood. They were stunned. That number was jolting. And plus, we now have a deficit over $1 trillion in this country. Unaffordable for 37 million Canadians that live here. Now, I'm not saying the significant levels of spending were not necessary, Madam Chair. I don't think anyone in this chamber would even say that. However, there is no good reason that the government could not be providing significantly more detail to Parliament about where the money is being allocated and what the money is for. In fact, I would argue that it is the bare minimum that should be expected out of this Liberal government. What is greatly concerning to me, Madam Speaker, is that we have seen what happens when the Prime Minister thinks he has free rein to spend money wherever and however he wants, and he gives it to his friends. We have seen that with the WE scandal. We just talked about it here in the House. It's exactly the reason that the government needs to be making itself available in the proper House of Commons. When the Prime Minister thought he could allocate funding wherever he wished, a sole-sourced contract worth over $900 million to an organization with no real experience at all managing that kind of massive program. Why was it? Well, we don't know. The Prime Minister has been dodging or ignoring some of the questions from the opposition for over a week now. So let's review what we do know about this. First, the Prime Minister's wife is actively involved in WE. Second, the Prime Minister's mother and brother have received close to a combined total of $300,000 in speaking fees from the organization. I have asked twice in the House, Monday and Tuesday, about the Prime Minister's mother receiving fees July 2nd of 2017, an event that was funded by the Government of Canada through the Heritage Department, $1.18 million to the WE organization. Third, the Finance Minister has two immediately family members involved in WE. And we know in the past hour, the finance minister has wrote a check to $41,000 for illegal travel benefits from the organization of We, following the 2 family trips that he took in 2017. He repaid the money today, just as he was set to testify in the Finance Committee today. Months later, when he took the trip in 2017, today 2020 in July, he finally fessed up and wrote the check for $41 million. I think Canadians want a new finance minister. From today, certainly, that is what Canadians are talking about. $41,000 later, he confessed to the We charity. Fourth, the Prime Minister nor the Finance Minister, as we know now, Madam Chair, they never recused themselves from the discussions around Cabinet about granting We this $912 million contract. And fifth and last, the sole source contract without any competitive progress whatsoever. So what they say, Madam Chair, it looks like a duck, I guess it quacks like a duck, and it is a duck, as we saw today from the Finance Minister at the Finance Committee here in the House of Commons. On top of that, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, as you well know, have had a long history of this kind of behavior. Since the current government came to power in October of 2015, it has been scandal after scandal after scandal. This isn't the first time that either the Prime Minister or even the Finance Minister or other members of his cabinet have been under investigation for violations of the Conflict of Interest Act. 2017, investigation on the Prime Minister himself, his vacation to the Millionaire Island with a registered lobbyist, which found that he violated 4 provisions of the Conflict of Interest Act. That finding made him the first Prime Minister in the history of this country, over 150 years, to have been found to violate the Conflict of Interest Act, the first ever in 150 plus years. There was also the scandal in 2017 surrounding the Finance Minister's private company that he owns, a villa in France, which somehow he forgot about. And then 2 years later, he did not report that to the Ethics Commissioner. Of course, there was also the clam scam scandal involving now the President of the Privy Council, and there's many, many more. Then, of course, who can forget about SNC-Lavalin, that big scandal that was in the House of Commons, when the Prime Minister improperly pressured the former Attorney General into advancing the interests of the private company rather than the public interest. This scandal led to numerous resignations from across the government. Some very good cabinet people leading the Liberal government were forced to sit over on this side as opposition members. Beyond my count, 5 different cases where the Prime Minister or even his cabinet was found guilty of breaking at least one clause in our ethics law. And we found out today we have another one, with the Finance Minister admitting to the We charity he did take $41,000 in benefits, writing the check out today. Former Ethics Commissioner Mary Dawson told CBC last week she thinks it would be difficult for her successor not to find that the Prime Minister convened Section 21. She even said that the Prime Minister has a blind spot when it comes to ethics. I would add to that, so does the Finance Minister. So how can Parliament, let alone Canadians from coast to coast, continue to trust that the Prime Minister will be acting in the country's best interest and handling the unprecedented powers given to him? What does the government do when this issue is raised at committee? We saw, Madam Chair, that the Prime Minister ignores calls to appear, and Liberal MPs filibustered in the committee so they can cover up the leader's tracks. These are some of the questions that Parliament needs answers for. And unfortunately, we only had 2 days here to open Parliament on Monday and Tuesday. We had a lot of questions. Some of the answers, I should say, Madam Chair, came this afternoon in the Finance Committee with that stunning revelation by the Finance Minister of Canada. Thank you.